There are still some things unaccountable for. Oh, like what? Like the role you played in all of this. Son, either you are very brave or very foolish. You're aware of course that police chief has all kinds of weapons at his disposal. Weapons? Sure. Take my testimony, for example. I don't have to give it if I don't want to. What? Is that true? I'm afraid so. The chief of police has the right to refuse to testify. Of course, such an action carries with it certain risks. Don't worry, I'm not here to hinder your trial. Just remember, if this turns out to be a big waste of time, don't say I didn't warn you. Very well. The witness may now begin his testimony. As I recall, Neil and I were questioning him that day. To make a long story short, we slipped up. That power outage didn't help either. When I went to my office, I found Lana there. Apparently, she had already arranged the crime scene. As you can see, I had nothing to do with the forgery. Huh. Is that when Dark was arrested? Him? He was lying on the floor, unconscious. When Emma sent Neil flying, it seems Stark bumped his head. I see. Everything seems pretty clear-cut. If the police chief has the right to refuse to testify, then I'd better hit him hard and fast. Leute, das große Finale. How can you know that? Because of the victim's body. It had already been moved. So that means... You found the body near Lana's desk. That's right. I think you said earlier it was my suit of armor that really stabbed the prosecutor. Yes. Anyway. So you're saying that the forgery had already taken place by the time you arrived at your office? That's exactly what I'm saying. I can understand how Lana must have felt, but moving a body and hiding evidence are inexcusable no matter what the circumstances. Is that how it really went down? Staring at the witness won't do you any good, Mr. Wright. If you're going to stare at anything, you'd better off staring at the court record. Okay, ich habe eine Idee. Ich glaube, wir müssen beim letzten Statement gleich, ich weiß nicht, wollen wir die Vase präsentieren oder dieses Stück Leder? Found and chief gun safe, evidence for something, but what? Bears Emma Sky's prints? Also entweder wir zeigen jetzt die Vase oder wir zeigen dieses Piece of Cloth. KMSA-Synchron. Ich hätte jetzt auch erst den Shop probiert. If you really had nothing to do with the forgery, then how do you explain this? What's that and what's that on it? A handprint? Chief Gunt, your explanation please. I don't know, you tell me, son. Huh? My dear Raito, don't you know the second rule of evidence law? Not this again. Evidence law. Rule 2. Unregistered evidence presented must be relevant to the case on trial. Tell me, how is that drag relevant to this trial? It appears the defense was not prepared. I guess it's too early to use this piece of evidence. Please accept my profound apologies, Chief. Would you mind giving the defense attorney another chance? Well, okay, I'll do it just this once, but only because you asked, Aji. Thank you. I assure you the defense is terribly sorry. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, sorry I didn't nail you. As I recall, Neil and I... As I recall, the ceremony was held at the police department that day. Yes, that's right. I guess you could say I'm a workaholic. After winning his award, Neil was all fired up too. That's probably what spooked Dark and made him run away like that. Was the defendant, Lana Skye, also present in the room? I don't quite remember. At the very least, she wasn't there when Dark ran for it. So the two of you ran immediately after him, right? That's right, but Dark made it to the elevator first, so Neil and I split up. He went upstairs and I went downstairs. I guess you could say he got lucky, haha. What's this about a power outage? Oh, that. The elevator stopped all of a sudden and I got the shock of my life. Well, probably not as shocked as Neil was when that knife went into his heart, though. That's not funny. Could you tell us what you saw? It was a shocking sight. Neil and the serial killer were lying in a heap on the floor, all tangled together. Dark was also lying collapsed on the floor. Yes, apparently he hit his head and was knocked out. Next to them were these two poor girls, Lana and Emma. Lana was cradling Emma in her arms. Looking back at it now, she must have already known what her sister had done. Several pieces of evidence were found in your office. Take this jar for example. That's the blue badger you showed us earlier. A piece of this jar was discovered in your safe. Not only that, but the evidence list I presented earlier was actually found inside your desk. It was found where? You see, Chief Gant, these articles of evidence uncovered in your office are both concrete proof that you also played a part in the illegal investigation. Chief Gant, what's the meaning of this? Ho? Here's a defense attorney who may even rival Worthy. So you admit to it then, that you were involved in the forgery? Who, me? Or do you mean you? Me? Why would I have anything to do with that? Well, you were the one who snuck into my office when you found this evidence. Prosecutors aren't the only ones capable of forging evidence, you know? Defense attorneys can do so too. Isn't that right, Wright? However, Detective Gumshoe was present during the investigation. Worthy, my boy. Not even detectives are exempt from the law. Rest assured, Dick will receive his due punishment. What? If Detective Gumshoe's salary drops any further, he will end up paying to work. Yes, well, in light of the detective's presence, please give us your testimony regarding these pieces of evidence found in your office and their relation to the forgery that took place in the crime scene. My, kids these days no longer know how to put two and two together. Let's see, what was it now? A jar fragment and a list? For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Anyway, you can't prove when those pieces of evidence were discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they are worthless. There's no reason I'd participate in a forgery. Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way. Ist doch eh schon gefeuert. It's alright, yes, Honor. When investigating the crime scene, you should have been more careful to observe protocol. You do understand that I am the chief of police, right? There will be consequences. Oh, indeed, I believe I will press charges, so you won't make the same mistake again. My apologies, Chief, but would you mind waiting until tomorrow for that? Today is, well, you know... Alright, Uji, in return, though... Yeah, I know. That place, right? Huh? What are these guys, telepathic? Okay, was ist jetzt auffällig? For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Anyway, you can't prove when those pieces of evidence were discovered. I'd appreciate if you'd be stopped making these ridiculous allegations. Yes, you do have a point. You wouldn't have the guts to do something like that. What? I'll have you know, back in the day, I once broke into a cattle ranch and tipped... Mr. Wright, what are you saying? Anyway, you can't prove you didn't carry in the evidence, can you? If you have proof to the contrary, you're going to need it later. Later? What are you talking about? What else? I'm talking about when Raito's prints are found. Yes, if they are found inside my safe, they prove his investigation was illegal. I've never faced anyone as slimy as this guy. It's Italian. What do you mean by that? This is all purely hypothetical, of course. But suppose I did place those items in my safe. Such an act wouldn't necessarily constitute forgery. If concealing evidence found at a crime scene isn't forgery, I'm not through speaking yet, Raito. It all depends on when the evidence was discovered. Are you saying this jaw fragment wasn't discovered in the initial investigation? It would appear not. After all, it wasn't listed in the evidence list. For all we know, it could have suddenly materialized the day after Dark was sentenced. Oh, and wouldn't that be convenient? Right. The chief is talking about the possibility, so long as you can't rule that out. Your remarks, however, clever they may be, will only succeed in wasting time. Think about it. There's no reason I'd... Rearranging the crimes, you wouldn't... Okay. Ich hab ne Idee. For all I know, I could have planted them... For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Anyway, you can't prove when those pieces of evidence were discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they are worthless. How can you look at me in the eye and say that? Because I'm innocent. Remember? Who was it that murdered Neil? I'm not sure I care for the word murderer here, but in the end the person responsible for Mr. Marshall's unfortunate demise was Emma's guy. Well, now do you see? Really, Chief Gant? At the very least there is one very large benefit you've reaped from all this. Oh, I wasn't aware. What is this benefit? That would of course be the position you have, Chief of Police. Oh. The resolution of the SL9 incident secured your promotion to Chief. That itself is a sufficient motive. Ho 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 ho. Oh, that's a good one. Huh? Do you really think I'm that incompetent? What do you mean? Even without that case, I was already in line to become the next chief. The resolution of SL9 merely sped up the inevitable a little. Is that true, Edgeworth? Yes, he was going to be made chief anyway. Gah! Be careful when pointing that finger, or you might wind up being the one pointed at. So that means there's only one possible motivation for you to commit forgery. If you didn't do it for yourself, then you did it for someone else. Don't be silly, Worthy. You know me better than that. There are only 3 people I look out for. Me, myself, and I. There it's out in the open now. Oh gee, would you mind if I change my testimony a little? By all means, please do. I wouldn't be anyone's accomplice if there was nothing in it for me. I wouldn't be anyone's accomplice if there was nothing in it for me. Jetzt wahrscheinlich den Stofffetzen mit Emmas Fingerabdrücken, I guess. Never mind. Nothing in it for you? Sorry, but the only person I care about is yours truly. That girl, Lana's little sister, was it? If you think I feel sorry for her, you'd better think again. You're right, you don't feel sorry for anyone. Be tough on crime and tough on people. That's how I was raised. You seem to be lax enough on yourself, though. Oh, that's a good one, Worthy. Could there have been something in it for him? Given him selfishness, would he have helped someone out? Point out accomplice? True, you might not help out anyone for their sake, but if it would benefit you, you might decide to assist someone. Mr. Wright, it appears you are positively determined to portray the chief as a nice man who likes to lend people a hand. That's not what I mean. Very well then. Who is this person you believe Chief Gunt may have helped forge evidence? Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye, the defendant. I believe it's quite obvious in light of the circumstances. Emma Skye fell victim to an unfortunate series of events. Who would want to help her more than her own sister, Lana? And as for Chief Gunt, he would also have a reason to help Lana if she asked him to. The reason, of course, is self-profit. Self-profit? What do you mean? After the SL9 incident was resolved, Lana Skye was appointed Chief Prosecutor at the Prosecutor's office. The person who arranged this job change was you, Chief Gunt. But how would he profit from all this? He would be able to use the Chief Prosecutor as his puppet. Essentially, he would acquire unchecked authority over all investigations. Do you mean to tell me that despite the Chief's formidable appearance, he plays with puppets? Oh, Uji. Oh, wait! You must mean puppet as in someone forced to do his bidding. Never mind. Admit it, Chief. You assisted Lana Skye in forging evidence. Your motive to appoint her as Chief Prosecutor so you could control her. Right to my boy. You have quite an imagination. Let me ask you something. What? Do you have any proof of this? That I controlled Lana? For example, is Lana testifying that I've done such a thing? Lana? She's keeping quiet to protect Emma. There's no way she'd testify against Gunt. I'm afraid without any proof, this all amounts to nothing more than mere conjecture. Unless there's also what happened in this incident. This incident, which one would that be? Of course I'm talking about the murder of Detective Bruce Goodman. The Chief Prosecutor had been acting strange throughout the entire trial. Almost as if someone has been controlling her. Worthy, you'd better watch your tongue. I wouldn't want you to get hurt. Just what do you mean? What he means, Your Honor, is that Chief Gunt is involved in the murder of Detective Goodman. Not only that, but the Chief is now making Lana take the rap to cover up his involvement. What? Order! I said order! Mr. Wright, you can't be serious. Huh? This is an affront to the highest ranking officer in our law enforcement agency. To accuse the chief of police of blackmail and murder? That is impossible. Your Honor, I was merely reiterating what Mr. Edgeworth said is in easier to understand language. It's too late, Mr. Wright. There is no turning back for us now. It looks like he's the one who decided to go through with this. Can you prove this, Mr. Wright? That the chief and a high-ranking officer of the law is involved in this murder? Good question. Regardless of his rank or title, Chief Gant is just a man. The question is he a criminal? I believe the evidence will tell. I see. Alright then. Let's see what Mr. Wright's got, and it better be good. Show us the evidence that ties Chief Gant to the murder of Detective Goodman. Darauf habe ich die ganze Zeit gewartet. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. This is the ID card list. Yes, the one that shows who entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. There was one ID on the list we couldn't determine the owner of yesterday. 777777. Sorry, but there's no way you can prove that's my card number. It's your number. What? How do you know that? The safe in Chief Gant's office requires a code to open. A 7-digit code. 7 digits? You don't mean... I'm afraid so, Your Honor. The code was 777777. The same as the remaining ID card number on that list. Chief Gant, you entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. Order, order! Chief Gant, what do you have to say? Nothing. The defense's search of my office was in violation of regulations. And I will demand Mr. Wright to be punished to the maximum extent of the law. But right now, this court demands an explanation from you about the use of this ID card. Chief Gant, so you admit it? You entered the evidence room on the day of the crime? What about it? I'm chief of police, whether it's the evidence room or the bathroom. What's the difference? I can go anywhere I want. Tell me, when you entered the room, were you alone? I always go to the bathroom alone, as I do with the evidence room. Detective Goodman wouldn't have happened to be with you that day, would he? Of course not. Why would he be? I hadn't seen him in days. You hadn't seen him in days, Chief Gant. I'm afraid you've just undone yourself. On that day, you had to have met with Detective Goodman. What do you mean? This trial's purpose is to determine Lana Sky's guilt. No, it isn't, Your Honor. This trial's purpose is to determine the truth. If Chief Gant met the victim on the day of the crime, then we need to determine one thing. What transpired during that meeting? In that case, Mr. Wright, I'm going to have to ask you for evidence. Show us proof that the victim went to meet Chief Gant on the day of the crime. Oops! Detective Goodman lost his ID card on the day of the crime. Or to be more accurate, Jake Marshall stole it. So Detective Goodman filed out a lost item report. He would have had to give that report to the chief of police. Yet you are in possession of the report, which means you can't be sure if he filed it. He filed it. How do I know, you ask? Because he needed to enter the evidence room that day. He needed to? Yes, to transfer the evidence out. Oh. Detective Goodman took the form to you, Chief Gant. Then, you accompanied the detective to the evidence room. I accompanied him? There's no other way the murderer and Detective Goodman could have entered the room. Hold on, let me guess what you're going to say next. I, the chief of police, murdered poor Goodman. Exactly. But wait. The chief didn't necessarily need to accompany him to the evidence room. He could have just lent him his ID card. Yes. Now that you mention it, I believe I might have done something of that sort. Sorry, but that's not possible. According to the record, your card was only used once. Yet you showed us your ID card earlier. If you had really lent it to Detective Goodman, it would have been found on his body. No! Chief Gant, you didn't. The murderer was most likely a spur of the moment crime for no one in their right mind, but chose the police department as a place to commit murder. After the murder, you contacted Lana at the prosecutor's office. Why? To dispose of Detective Goodman's body, of course. You're forgetting, Mr. Wright, that the victim's body was discovered in the prosecutor's office parking lot. How did he manage to move it there? I was at the police department the entire day, you know. And everyone's aware that Lana stayed at the prosecutor's office after the ceremony. Everyone except me, it seems. Still, you're the chief of police. We have an entire police force at your disposal. Oh, so you think I just ordered an officer to do it? Hey you, take this here dead body over to the prosecutor's office. I don't think so. Chief Gant, you left all the evidence we need to prove how you moved the body up to the prosecutor's office. And all this time I thought it was a useless clue just taking up space. How could the chief have moved the body? Mr. Wright, show us this evidence. To move the victim's body, Chief Gant used this. This is how he moved Detective Goodman's body. What's that? A screwdriver? But what does it have to do with this case? Mr. Edgeworth, think back to the day of the crime. Was this a screwdriver? What is this screwdriver doing here? It's here because... I was asked to go by Chief Gant, no less. He told me he wanted me to keep it here in the prosecutor's office. In any case, on the day of the stabbing, I brought this back here. After the ceremony ended that day, I didn't plan to return to the prosecutor's office, but you did, because Chief Gant asked you to. You mean The body was found in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. I think it's obvious what happened. The body was moved by that car. Detective Goodman's body was carried in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. Yes, unless of course you have another explanation, Chief. Why else would you have asked Mr. Edgeworth to transport evidence from a closed case? There's only one plausible explanation: to transport the body to your accomplice, Miss Lana Skye.